I'm not a victim of circumstance. I am a product of my decisions. The decisions I make today have a cost. Everything has a cost, everything has an expiration date. And can you calculate them as you're doing them? And that will save you a lot in the future. Be open to new things, be open to awareness that may be uncomfortable to learn about, but it's healthy to learn about uncomfortable things. We want the comfortable people to be uncomfortable and the uncomfortable people to become comfortable.
Hello, and I'm here with my good friend Roger. And Roger has some really awesome pearls of wisdom for us. And the first one today is, if you've ever heard somebody say, I'm not a victim of circumstances, I am the product of my decision, and it irritated you, well, we're going to get into that today. Roger, hi.
Hello, Laziena. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Guys, thank you so much. I love that we're doing this. It gets me so excited. Would you
Thank
like
you.
to tell us a little bit about who you are?
Well, I'm a physician here in South Florida. I'm an anesthesiologist with my specialty in pain management. I did a fellowship in it, and I recently retired after practicing for 40 years. But being part of the pain management community, I also realized that a lot of patients I was getting had issues regarding their personality and the decisions they were making in their life that affected the pain that they had. And so I entered into a workshop system where I could learn more about issues in childhood that regarded into patients' pain syndromes. And that's who I am, and that's why I've been accumulating a lot of information and experiences with personal development.
That is so awesome. And I get to benefit from it too.
Yes, you do. So you're right. The first pearl that we're going to talk about today is the pearl that's called I'm not a victim of circumstance. I am a product of my decisions. And you'll hear patients, or in this case, clients, come to your office and say, well, it's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. Whether it's my boss or my spouse or even my children, and it's not my fault. I'm just a victim of the circumstance that I'm in. And you get to realize that many times the client himself, by the decisions that they've made, has caused this situation to occur. So they're really a product of their decisions that they've made, even though they don't appreciate that it was them who made the decisions.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm all yours.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely relate to that. Before I also started personal development, I didn't realize that I was doing that, and it came out in my words. It came out in my behaviors and everything too. But what I notice nowadays as I'm paying more attention, it's when I start to use blame language and it's his fault and it's her fault or they, and I can recognize that I'm being the victim of that circumstance, and um, I I have the power and I have the choice to make different decisions that supports me not being a victim of that circumstance. And a lot of that also came from reading that book called The Empowerment Dynamic, where I can recognize where I am on the victim triangle and actively choose to do something about it. But it's absolutely true, because if I am in an environment where I feel that I'm being taken advantage of, for example, instead of going to Roger, to you, and say, oh my gosh, my boss is doing this or my friend is doing that, I can ask the question, how am I creating this? And how can I
Very
do
good.
that? Yeah, how can I do that differently? But before, I didn't know how to do that. How did it show up for you? Like, was there a moment that you realized it, or how did you realize it?
Well, when I started reviewing all of the decisions I made during my childhood and adolescence, and even as an adult, I realized that a lot of the decisions were emotional and gave me a pat on the back and made me feel good emotionally, but they were poor decisions for me as a human being and my career. So I got to realize that the reason I was making many decisions was not healthy for me. It was nice for my ego, nice for feeling good, but it wasn't a healthy decision. So it was in reviewing all of my lifelong decisions that I realized that I'm the reason for either my failures or my successes.
Yeah. And circumstances can happen, but it doesn't mean that that circumstance determine how we move forward. We can take the benefit. We can look and see what the benefit or what it's teaching. I can look and see what the benefit is and what I'm learning from the situation, rather than letting that determine the outcome of my life.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. Do you have any practical example of what that can look like?
Well, actually, with my family, my
Okay.
wife, my children, my parents, yes, I see that there are times when I've had arguments with my family members, and I always say, well, why is this person picking on me? Or why
Mm-hmm.
is this person arguing or criticizing me? And I realize that if I take a step back, it was something that I did previously that caused this to be a situation.
Yeah, so self accountability, right? To be able
Yes,
to,
I have to be accountable. And a lot of people fear accountability because it's painful, it's embarrassing,
yeah,
and it's difficult to manage when you think that you're always correct and everybody else is wrong.
yeah,
And then accountability makes you realize that no, no, we're human beings and we make mistakes too. And we have to hold ourselves accountable in order to appreciate the mistakes we made. And then we can correct them. But like they say, you can't heal what you don't feel. If you don't put yourself in that feeling situation, you can't heal yourself. So if you don't take accountability for the mistakes you made, you can't change them for the next time those situations arise.
yeah. And my relationship with accountability has been so life changing. I feel like there in the past, when I was the victim of those of circumstances, if when anything came to accountability, I would feel blamed and I would feel shamed. My nervous system would instantly go into protectiveness. And now with curiosity, I feel the curiosity removes the shame and blame, because I can observe it. I can look at it and see how is it that and like you said, that I can have a tone with my daughter, and that has a reaction for her, and over time, every time she hears that tone, it's going to have a reaction for her. The accountability there is I can adjust my tone as well, and look at the emotional impact that has on her or anybody else. I used to be a very reactive person, and I would instantly go into reactions when I would. Oh, my daughter is this, my daughter is that. Well, I'm the one who she learned the reactions from. I'm the one who embedded that in her. So I think there's a relational responsibility to do it differently in that space. Awesome.
Yes, and we are the primary role models for our children. So, for example, my two sons, their whole life looked up to me and they would copy the decisions that I make. Not only do they copy the good decisions, for example, they're studious like I am, but they copied my bad decisions. And that's something I had to appreciate when I saw them making bad decisions. I said, hold on a second. They're just copying me.
Do you think when it comes to parenting and watching our children pick up some of those behaviors that parents in general feel carry too much shame over it and kind of give up on what they can do?
Yes, shame is definitely a big part of my and many people's decision making process. For example, we'll avoid making a difficult decision because we're ashamed of what our histories are, or we're ashamed at what the results will be. And so we'll shy away from those decisions, even though those decisions could be more healthy for us in the future.
Hmm. That's very true. What do you think people get wrong about this topic specifically, being a victim of the circumstances and understanding that we're the product of our decision?
What do you think? What do I think about the decisions?
Where do you think people in general get that wrong?
I think their ego gets involved in the decision making process. And every time ego gets involved, it's always a bad choice.
Yeah, that is that is very, very true.
Yeah, a lot of people are ashamed, and their ego doesn't allow them to make a decision, even though that decision would be healthy.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of how you I mean we kind of talked a little bit about it, but just like a little nugget, right? Of how you used to be the victim of your circumstance and how you do that differently now.
Well, yes. For example, I'm overweight.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been overweight, even from childhood. And I would always give reasons or excuses, I should say, for why I'm overweight. And the truth is, it's 100% my fault. I'm the one putting the food in my mouth. No one is forcing, food in my mouth. It's 100% my fault, or I should say, my decision.
Yeah.
And if I were honest with myself, even back as a child, but then again, as a child, I didn't have the tools to think about things or to look at the big picture. But now, with as an adult, I can look at my obesity and say, okay, there's a reason for why I'm stuffing food in my mouth. There's a reason why this is a comfort to me. And what
Mm-hmm.
is uncomfortable that I'm forcing food in my mouth to be comfortable, and it's like not wanting to feel what is the discomfort that I don't want to feel, and that's the reason I'm putting the food in my mouth. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm a product of my decision. I'm deciding to put extra food in my mouth to cover up a feeling. So how about if I sit in the feeling, I review the feeling, and then maybe I can make a different decision.
Yeah. A friend of mine once said she read this book called The Untethered Soul. And she was like, in the book, it's very good. It has a lot of wisdom and everything. But one of the things that the book didn't talk about or share was how do you feel your feelings? Like it tells you, oh, you have to feel it or you have to
How do you
like
feel your what?
how do you feel your feelings? Like how do you go about feeling them?
Okay.
And she didn't understand how to like to break it down, and I find that's true with a lot of people too, to be able to describe how to feel your feelings. I didn't even know what feelings were. I just knew that I did feel good, but I didn't know that there were layers of it. So maybe that's something we could talk about in a later episode. I have another one of your pearls that you have talked about, that you have sent me. The most important math is for the math to learn is how to calculate the future costs of today's decision.
Yes, that's something that a lot of people don't know or don't appreciate. And it took me a while to appreciate the importance of that pearl. The decisions I make today have a cost. Everything has a cost, everything has an expiration date. And can you calculate them as you're doing them? And that will save you a lot in the future.
Yeah.
Like every time I do something, I ask myself, am I being lazy? Am I not doing it because I don't want to expend the effort to walk the extra 3 blocks instead of driving, or to do something else instead of doing the hard thing? And the cost is in the future.
I'm witnessing that right now as well in my life, because for for the majority of my life, I didn't know that I didn't know. I didn't know that I wasn't aware. And so I was walking around blindly and then like, oh my gosh, look at all of this stuff that's happening to me. It's my, woe is me. But now as I'm being more present, I can see like, okay, for example, when I wrote the book, The Relationship Repair Language, last year, I knew I saw the vision of what I wanted that to look like for the future. And so I was intentional with the decisions that I made to move forward with that. And I can see the outcome of it, and I'm also living in the outcome of it. So when I look back, I see, okay, I made that decision to do it this way, and now here I am watering the plant every day, maintaining it and pushing forward and taking advantage of the opportunities that are in front of me. But that's because I felt like I started to become more intentional with my decisions. Before, it was just default, making decisions from limiting beliefs, making decisions from not believing in myself, or whatever the circumstances at the time was, or whatever trauma that I didn't even know that I needed to heal. And some of those had devastating costs. Like when I was a young parent, I wasn't emotionally present, so I didn't know how to meet my children's emotional needs. And then that showed up later on in
That's
life,
good.
and it was a devastating effect. So I like being able to have the other view of it. When I was in the victim mindset, I couldn't see the other side of it until I started to get intentional. And it reminds me of the law of the universe, cause and effect.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the
So
fact that you were young, you were not aware, you didn't have the tools. No one taught you as a child the tools for personal development.
right.
And so you're just walking through life with your eyes closed and unable to examine the decisions that you're making. And those decisions are very costly in the future, whether
Yeah.
it harms your children or it harms yourself. But now that you have the tools and you can read and you understand the decisions you're making, then the results in the future are more healthy.
Yeah. I like that. I really, really like that. I know we sometimes we talk about making a vision board and following through, or setting goals and following through. There was a time when that felt really daunting, and it felt really hard to even achieve. And I felt like that stemmed from me not even believing in myself or understanding what I was capable of. There was a lot of self-doubt. So to believe that there's a outcome that could support who I am and who I want to be didn't seem feasible. It didn't seem like it was something that I could do. But doing a lot of the work and really reconciling with what drives me and understanding me more, that really helped change the outcome of that too, of being able to see it. Yeah. Okay. And we'll have time for in. Oh, did you have something to say? Were you going
No,
to say something?
we have one more pearl to talk about.
That's right. Would you like to take it?
Okay, it's number 17, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll read it to you. Your past is in your head, your future is in your hands. And that's about you deciding your decisions based on a healthy future. If you know what you want in your future, then the decisions you make today can be focused for the results you want. It's not like you just make decisions today without knowing what the future is going to be for you. If you work backwards and start out with what result you want in the future, then you can work backwards like a flow chart and see what decisions you need to make today. You start out with where you are, you see where you end, you see what obstacles are in your path, and every decision you make is made looking at this whole schematic from where you are in the beginning to where you want to be at the end, what obstacles are in your way, what power you have to overcome those obstacles. And you
Yeah.
look at the decisions you make as a whole process of decisions, not
Mm-hmm.
just individual decisions as they arise.
Yeah. And I feel like these three, and I know we have a few more that we can dive into, but these three alone are so powerful because it really sets up that foundation of coming out of the victim mindset, or how to come out of the victim mindset.
That's right.
I think when I hear the word victim, sometimes there were times when it could feel like a blame or a shame or something pointed, something negative, something that's an attack. Whereas now, I remember there was a time someone told me we have such a victim mindset, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not a victim. What do you mean? I'm like, what kind of victim? Is it a victim like a sexual abuse victim, a domestic violence victim?" But I didn't really understand that is a whole mindset that goes with that.
That's true. Can
Yeah.
I point out,
Yeah,
do you have the list of pearls in front of you?
I do.
Look at
Yeah.
look at my number 15. And that's something that after I had a pain clinic for 10 years, from 1992 to 2002 in Boca
Mm-hmm.
Raton. And that's one of the things that Im- that was really impressive for me with my pain patients. I'll read it to you. The mind body connection is a two-way street. I used to have patients who had medical issues, whether it was chronic pain or some sort of rheumatoid issues or anything that was painful, but you couldn't put your finger on a specific diagnosis. And a lot of times they had personality issues from childhood and trauma that would come through as somatic features. And then the other way, people who had real disease, whether it was a broken leg or something that was chronic, ended up with psychological issues because of it. So the mind body connection is a two-way street. What's
Mm-hmm.
going on in your mind affects the rest of your body, and what's going on in your body affects your mind. And people don't appreciate that as powerful as it is.
Yeah.
So that's just something that I've learned over 10 years of having a pain.
That's very true. I find now that there's a lot of somatic practices that are coming out more in society right now to really align with the mind body connection and our fascia and everything else that's embedded in us. I truly believe that's true. I also believe that, our heart connection is important too. I feel that when we were born, there's this doctor in the UK. He has this thesis about um, from 0 to 3 is when we learn our nervous system regulation and our emotional needs, and because we're so little, so I think of it as that moment when a need goes unmet, but it can feel like dismissive, and it could feel like, oh, I'm left alone, and I feel it in my chest. It's like a drop in the chest, and so I start paying attention to that whenever stress comes around, but where in the moment did I feel that? And it happens, like it happens randomly. Someone can say a word, I can read something, and I feel that in my body. So when I think about all of our different childhood experiences, I can see how we can make up an illness, or an illness can, vice versa. It goes both ways. So I do find value in that. Well, as we wrap up, Roger, what would you like to, what is something that you would like to, the listeners to take away from this short little episode that we have done?
The pearl that I'd like my listeners to take away is be open to new things, be open to awareness that may be uncomfortable to learn about, but it's healthy to learn about uncomfortable things. So, as we say, we want the comfortable people to be uncomfortable and the uncomfortable people to become comfortable. So, if you're willing to be uncomfortable for a little bit, it's very eye opening for you and healthy too.
Yeah,
So don't be afraid of being uncomfortable.
I love
That's
that.
what I want my listeners to take away with.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, this brings us to the end of this little episode, and we will return with more of Roger's wisdom. We have quite a few to get through, and every week we'll unpack a little bit of each, and we'll bring it to our lovely listeners' ears and hope that they can find some value in it too.
Thank you very much, Laziena. It was a pleasure being with you.
Love it.